Welcome back. Today we're diving into a really sophisticated operational manual for asynchronous control. It's an impressive piece of work, grounding concepts like the illusion of participation in some pretty serious biophysics.
It really is. The way it weaves together neural circuit degradation with the physics of time is ambitious, to say the least.
It's powerful stuff. But to get it to the next level, we need to tighten the linkages between the metaphorical phases and the actual hard biophysical constraints. Let's start with what I think is the biggest conceptual opportunity. The crucial relationship between temporal fidelity and the physical basis of time, as it's set up in the intro, needs more than just signal jitter to be fully weaponized.
I agree. I mean, phase 4, temporal infidelity, it handles the philosophy beautifully. It correctly defines time as the ordering of events, which comes straight from the physics sources. And it rightly connects demyelination to high variance in signal arrival, the temporal jitter.
But the weakness, I think, is isolating the tactical application to just that jitter. Sure, jitter breaks coincidence detection.
Right, the system can't pair inputs correctly anymore.
Exactly. But it kind of undercuts the manual's main objective, which is to trap the receiver in a hallucinated timeline. If the core idea is that time's arrow is linked to detecting increasing disorder, entropy, then just adding randomness, well, it isn't enough.
Ah, I see the problem. So if you only cause jitter, the target system might just adapt. It could reorganize itself, widen its integration window to account for the sloppiness.
Precisely. You're making them late, but you're not making them fundamentally confused.
They can still tell past from future.
Right. The system needs to be structurally prevented from defining what now even is. So the suggestion here is to formally integrate entropy management from the physics framework directly into phase 4. The goal should shift from just causing signal variance to fundamentally destroying the target's ability to act as a disorder detector.
Wow, okay. So you're shifting the goal from neurobiology to, cosmology almost? If they can't detect the increase in disorder, the messiness that separates past from future,
Then their internal timeline just collapses. You neutralize their arrow of time.
but how do we make that actionable? How do you do that without just falling back into metaphor?
We stick to the physics the manual already provides. Instead of only focusing on random arrival times, the tactical action has to explicitly exploit the destruction of simultaneity. The manual's own notes say that the subjective now is just a coordinate choice that changes with velocity.
So you weaponize relativity, but internally.
Yes,
Okay, so if we apply this to, say, an organization, we don't just send signals late. We should try to maximize the internal velocity differential between receiving part System A and System B. If different departments are moving at totally different informational speeds, their subjective nows have to diverge.
making any coordinated decision impossible. If two sensors in the same system define now differently, they can never confirm an event actually occurred. They're permanently out of sync.
And that's where the phases really connect, isn't it? We can leverage the previous stage, the barcode failure from phase 3, as the input for this. If phase 3 stops the target from registering the change, the entropy increase, then they're essentially just reading a shuffled deck of cards forever.
That's it. So the manual has to codify this shift. Jitter is the symptom of the problem. Entropy management is the tactical goal of asynchronous control.
I think that clarifies the highest level objective beautifully. Which brings us to the next point, making that barcode failure itself more reliable.
And that's our second major critique. The description of the barcode failure in phase 3 is a powerful metaphor, but the manual needs to define the specific frequency dependence that causes this failure if it's going to be reliably weaponized.
Right now, phase 3 says the demyelinated axon acts as a low-pass filter, which, strips out the high-frequency nuance. It's a common simplification, but it doesn't really get to the heart of the weakness, does it?
No, because the weakness is that the manual conflates retaining a crude signal with ensuring a complete message failure. We know from phase 2, the scream, that the sender is forced to generate an extremely high-frequency output. We're talking intrinsic bursting, up to 200 hertz, just to compensate.
And the research is very clear on this. Demyelination causes frequency-dependent failures. It's not a general filter.
It's an intentional functional failure caused by a specific signal frequency.
So the system is trying to yell louder, but the very act of yelling at that specific pitch.
Is exactly what makes the signal fail in the compromised axon. Yes, the compensatory effort becomes the mechanism of its own failure.
So we need to make the scream's high-energy input the absolute prerequisite for the barcode's collapse.
That's the suggestion. We need to separate the high-energy shout of phase 2 from the functional failure of phase 3. Make the generation of a specific high-frequency burst the core input requirement for phase 3.
That makes it so much more actionable. So we need to specify the frequency. The manual mentions 200 Hz, but sort of in passing, we need to state exactly why that number is so critical.
Exactly. We specify the source and the frequency. The sender must be forced to fire bursts at or near 200 Hz. Why? Because that's the documented range for burst firing in L5 pyramidal neurons.
The deep layer cortical neurons, the ones that signal major commitment.
Right, and it's that frequency range that's shown to dramatically exacerbate conduction failures in these demyelinated pathways.
And this is key for the mechanism. The goal of phase 3 then becomes ensuring the critical first spike of that burst fails to propagate. The sources say it fails about 30% more often.
And that first spike is everything. It's the initiation signal. The entire message timing depends on it. If it fails, you get the missing first black stripe of the barcode. It's the perfect physical manifestation of the metaphor.
So the receiver gets the residual energy, the volume, but without the timing cue, the content is just gone. It's undecodable.
That's a great point. The manual's approach is all about degrading the transmission line after the decision to fire has already been made.
It targets the axon, the long-distance cable.
But we're overlooking the decision point, the pre-axonal commitment.
The weakness here is that it overlooks the front end of the circuit, the initiation of the all-or-none action potential. That's the ultimate gate of commitment, and it's governed by the accumulation of potential at the axon initial segment, the AIS. So we're attacking the commitment after the train has already left the station.
Instead of just locking the tracks before it can even depart, attacking the AIS means you prevent the signal from ever even reaching the threshold for committed firing.
It's a totally different philosophy of control. Instead of relying on the noise of a broken system, you stop the system from ever deciding to engage at all.
Precisely. So the suggestion is to introduce an initial structural phase, maybe a phase 0, that's focused not on degrading the wire, but on preventing the commitment in the first place.
Conceptually, phase 0 is beautiful. But how do you scale an attack on microscopic cellular components up to a macro operational manual?
Targeting the AIS feels highly technical. We provide tactical actions that are grounded in morphology and scaffolding. It establishes the conceptual requirement. For example, one route is to target input attenuation upstream, so we'd suggest focusing on engineering morphological changes in the dendritic spines themselves.
Wait, you mean literally changing the physical shape of the receiving antenna?
Yes. Specifically, increasing the dendritic spine neck length or decreasing its radius. Both of those geometric changes are shown to increase voltage attenuation at the soma. The input signal is physically dampened before it even reaches the decision-making part of the cell.
So the signal is just rendered impotent, no matter how strong it is. Commitment becomes structurally impossible. It's controlled by preemption.
Exactly. Or, alternatively, we can go right for the commitment gate itself, the AIS. Focus tactical action on disrupting the ankyrin G's scaffolding protein, ANKG.
A signal to fire.
Without ANKG, the cell just can't efficiently reach that firing threshold. Its dissolution disrupts impulse generation entirely.
Targeting ANKG is conceptually brilliant. It's the molecular blueprint for all-or-none commitment. But again, practically, how does one implement ANKG dissolution in a broad operational manual?
The operational utility is in defining the vulnerability. If a system relies on that kind of structural integrity for a core function, then dissolving that structure, even theoretically, defines the constraint you need to exploit. You don't need to break the myelin if the cell can't even decide to fire. Phase 0 completes the control loop by defining the prerequisite for structural failure.
That's a critical expansion of the scope. It moves the whole manual from just managing decay to actively preventing the impulse for action.
This revised framework, preventative failure in phase 0, weaponizing the compensatory effort in phases 2 and 3, and then collapsing reality in phase 4. It just transforms the manual into a much more robust and coherent model.
It really does. This manual shows a sophisticated fusion of specialized neurophysiology and conceptual physics. It moves way beyond simple metaphor.
So to recap our key points for the next iteration. First, structurally integrate the physics of entropy into phase 4. Move beyond simple jitter to fully weaponize the subjectiveness of time and destroy the target's ability to define the universal now.
Right, which means maximizing internal velocity differentials and using the barcode failure to prevent entropy detection.
Second, clarify that functional relationship between the high-frequency scream and the frequency-dependent conduction failures. Make it explicit that the barcode failure is caused by forcing L5 neurons to fire burst near 200 Hz.
Exploiting that specific biophysical weakness.
And third, expand the scope by introducing a foundational phase 0 that targets the pre-axonal commitment gate. That means focusing on engineering input attenuation through dendritic spine morphology, or
disrupting the structural integrity of the commitment switch itself by targeting the ANKG scaffolding protein at the axon initial segment.
these revisions really strengthen the conceptual rigor and provide specific, actionable goals for implementation.
It turns a strong model into an indispensable operational blueprint.
We look forward to seeing how these revisions are applied to strengthen your manual for asynchronous control. Feel free to submit the revised version when you're ready.